Hey guys, it's Crossroads here. Today I wanted to talk specifically about DeepSeek and its implications for the broader market. Now we'll talk some about what I think it'll do to NVIDIA potentially, but I really want to focus on the macro and the market. So first, what is DeepSeek? Well, what it is and what it is not. DeepSeek is an LLM. It's one of many, but this one has gotten the attention of the market for a number of reasons. Now, first, it is a very high downloaded app on the App Store. Maybe some of that traffic is legitimate, maybe some of it's not, but it's got a lot of people's attention. And the reason why really comes down to performance and training costs. So let's take a look at this. So this is from one of their white papers. They have a number of white papers out that you can access and look at too. And you can basically see the performance of DeepSeek versus OpenAI O1, DeepSeek R1, OpenAI O1 Mini, DeepSeek version 3. And this version 3 may be a little bit hard to see, but you can see where it performed compared and relative to some of the other models, that it actually held up quite well. But that's not what gets people very interested. There's other models that also do compare quite well to ChatGPT and others. It's really this white paper here. And this is on the technical side, and it was issued really not that recently, but it really got the attention of a lot of people, especially as they launched the product. And so they talk about the training process using what they use as far as tokens and what they use in terms of H800 GPU hours. So this is one of those chips. It's not an H100, but it's an H800. So not quite top of the line from NVIDIA. So they estimated the pre-training hours were this 2,664, and at a cost of about $2 per GPU unit, they come with this total training cost for version 3 of DeepSeek. So it's a little, you'll see $6 million. It's 5.576 million is the estimate there. Again, it's just an estimate. Now, that really got people's attention because a lot of the spend on the CapEx side has been buying as many GPU clusters as they could possibly have. Normally H100s here in the United States, harder for China to get those directly. Maybe they're going through Singapore, maybe they're not. But regardless, that's typically what they do, is spend billions and billions and billions of dollars to be able to develop these clusters and actually be able to train their models. Now, this came out as a bit of a bombshell. And so the market now is looking at DeepSeek as if it only costs, $5.5 million. So what is this not? This isn't actually the total cost at all. And it doesn't mean that the CapEx spend can be basically minimal. Because we actually see here, if we look at it, says we emphasize again the economical training cost of DeepSeek version 3 in this table. But it says here to note that the aforementioned costs include only the official training of DeepSeek version 3, excluding the costs associated with prior research, which, were not cheap, and ablation experiments on architectures, algorithms, or data. It doesn't include, the skilled workers that helped design this experiment, that helped optimize things on the front end as well. Doesn't include many, many things. It's just pure cost of renting the equivalent of H100 GPU hours. Maybe they're H800, maybe they're not. And so it doesn't mean it's that cheap to train an LLM. Now, 5.5 million might look a lot for you and I, but for a company, that's quite reasonable when you're looking at something like the $500 billion Stargate implications that are certainly out there, SoftBank, OpenAI, and that sort of thing. Now, DeepSeek, I think better than anything, did show that this is a bit of a commodity. If we look at LMSys, the Arena score, this is a service. If you never used it before, you can go to Arena side by side, type whatever you want the LLM to do, and it'll compare two side by side. And all you do is basically vote on whichever you think had the better outcome. So it's fairly neutral. And if we look here at the performance, and this can shift around a little bit, you can see where the rank is on a couple of different indicators. You have Gemini near the top. Kudos to Google's team. They've really performed quite well over the last 6 months. A lot of improvements. There's ChatGPT's 4.0 model, the latest version. And look right here, DeepSeek R1, that's the more expensive model. That's a fuller model. But DeepSeek V3, that's what they're talking about. And if you look at the actual Arena score, this is derived from those up and down votes. You can see the number of votes here as well. It performs quite well. So One thing you can't say about the DeepSeek model is that it's trash or that it's terrible. It does have some limitations. If you ask about topics that are not approved by the CCP, you're going to get an answer that has been curated, or it just says it cannot answer at all. Though, to be fair, we have that with most of our LLMs. And by the way, this is a commodity. If you look here, you can see the total number of models that they do check. This is growing all the time. When I started tracking this a while ago, actually pretty early on, there was like 30 models, then 95, then 195. Now, a lot of these too are different versions of similar. There's the O1 Mini, for example, but there's new ones that are a little bit different. The Yi Lightning, ON 2.5. So as there's more and more of these, especially if they become cheaper, maybe not quite as cheap as the DeepSeek version 3 is intimating, you're going to have a lot more of these, and it's going to be seen as a commodity. So that's bad news for a business that isn't able to scale that commodity effectively. Hyperscalers, I think, will be okay. And it's really good news, I think, for the market as a whole. One thing that was brought to my mind was by Gary Tan. He's the CEO of Y Combinator. Was this paradox, Jevons Paradox. And I had not heard of this, to be fair, prior to DeepSeek. You may not have either, but we know the basic idea. The idea of this paradox is as technology becomes more and more cheap, the more usage it gets. It's pretty simple, right? At first, usually when technological breakthroughs come out, the uber rich get access to it first, and that happens with almost every technology. Also happens with businesses, that the richest businesses get access to it first and oftentimes develop it. And as the costs come down from Moore's Law or Wright's Law or whatever other innovations that are happening and the commoditization of certain industries as well, then people like you and I that are just regular everyday Joes all of a sudden have access to what once was just held by the uber rich. And we saw this and perhaps illustrated most recently within the internet. Now, I'm old enough. I remember when the internet was very, very new and novel, and a lot of people didn't know yet what to make out of it, other than that it was very exciting. It's a little bit like LLMs right now, although I think we're a little bit further along at than that point. But with the internet, with the internet, initially, the telecom industry really went after that. And they thought, okay, this is great. We got the internet. And what we're going to do is basically we're going to build it like our telecommunications industry. So we're going to lay a lot of fiber optic cables, lay a lot of lines, and we're going to create an internet superhighway. And all of this information, all these companies are going to flow through us. And so AT&T was one of those that experimented and really got heavily into this. Focus on that very, very high CapEx expenditure. And then all of a sudden, partly from different technologies such as Cisco, they were able to have and launch a lot of different internet service providers. So no longer was there this chokehold of just a few mega conglomerates of telecom industry that said, hey, the internet runs through us. There was a lot of different options. So the implication of that for the individual consumer, as things got a little bit cheaper, is you can see here, the price for internet service actually went down for a lot of consumers. Now, there are some individual year-over-year noise, but we can see where the internet was priced at back in 1997, around $50 at that time. And you look at different estimates, you might get different prices. Today, the average internet cost, and not all internet is created equal, is $43.07. This is not inflation adjusted. I'll say that again. It's not inflation adjusted. If it was, we'd be spending the equivalent of about $20 in 1997 money. So internet has actually not increased in price for most people in most areas of the country here in the United States for a long, long time. Why? Because it's a commodity, because there's a lot of internet service providers, and they're all scrambling for their little piece of low margin pie, which has been a very good thing for a lot of us. You and I are watching this on the internet, after all. With the internet and the access becoming more and more widespread, and as the costs go further and further down, a lot more people and a lot more smaller businesses have been able to build on the internet. And as a result, that's been a very good thing for the US economy and the world economy as a whole. that is going to be the trend that I believe will continue with this training cost on LLMs. Whether DeepSeek version 3 really did cost, as far as this version, training costs of about $5.5 million or not, it seems that there's a significant step change in training costs, and that has implications on other models. So if we see the same pattern, and I think that we will, as with the internet, that there's suddenly a lot of providers and a lot of businesses and individuals that suddenly have access to maybe not top of the line tools, but good enough, we're going to see a lot of companies that are spawned that don't exist right now just because of AI technology. We're going to see a lot of startups with 10, 20, 30, 50 people that don't have to raise billions of dollars for buying GPUs and creating GPU clusters and doing a lot of training on their LLMs. Instead, they're able to train these relatively efficiently and cheaply. And as a result, that's going to be really, really good for the economy. Now, two implications as far as a market. So obviously, if there's a lot more startups and a lot more activity in AI over the next 5, 7, 10 years and longer, then that's going to be very good for the economy overall. Not all of these will be successful, but a lot of them will be. There's going to be an increased need for energy. That initially, I think the reaction, and you can see that in some of the energy names that are out there, people thought, oh no, these GPU clusters and these data centers, they're just not going to need, we're not going to need as many of them. And so as a result, those prices take. But it's going to be the opposite, that even though those large capital projects are not going to be quite as common and not be draining quite as much power, as things get cheaper for training, more and more people will be using them. And so that will create a higher demand for energy, especially in-home energy. So some of those forgotten names, it's not just oil and natural gas and coal and nuclear energy, all important, but also some of those forgotten green energy technologies, much like my dear Enphase and solar. It also has implications as far as AI infrastructure, companies that are building tools for people to use, that are developing their new enterprise systems, that are wanting to build at the edge and use software such as Palantir software, as long as they're able to scale that down. And I know with Palantir, you're able to with AIP, they're going to do very well in that kind of environment too. Now, you might ask, lastly, what about NVIDIA? What about AMD? I am a lot less certain on those names. I think NVIDIA will be fine. After all, there still is a need for the GPU cluster. And so this is a post back in December from Andres Karpathy. And, he worked previously with Tesla. He's a well-known name in this industry and a worthy follow. But he talked about DeepSeek, back in December. And so he said they're making it look easy, talked about the joke of a budget. And right here, this paragraph has implications for NVIDIA. Does this mean that you don't need large GPU clusters for frontier LLMs? No, but you have to ensure that you're not wasteful with what you have. And this looks like a nice demonstration that there's still a lot to get through with both data and algorithms. And I would agree, whether or not the numbers are exactly as they're reported with DeepSeek version 3 or not, it seems like it's a phenomenal breakthrough, at least shows what's possible. Maybe it's exaggerated somewhat, but it's an exciting thing for economy. It's an exciting thing rather than just having the uber wealthy and the very, very wealthy companies benefit. This helps scale that technology down to the regular person. So I'm excited for what's to come. I'm buying the dip on a lot of names that this dip gave us today, and I'll continue to do so as the dip gets dippier. On NVIDIA, I think that I'll buy in on that too. I think that they'll be fine, even though this does maybe hurt them and hurt their valuation in the short term. I see it as a buying opportunity. I'm still trying to figure out where my entry point needs to be, but it's not perhaps too far from here. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you have the same perspective on DeepSeek? Do you think it's all fraud and forgery? Do you think that it's here and going to be the end all and be all of LLMs and that the AI arms race is basically over? Or like me, do you think that this has massive, exciting ramifications, not just for the US economy, but the worldwide economy and markets in general? Let me know what you think. As always, thank you for watching, commenting, and subscribing. For now, happy investing.